Is this thing on? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And a very warm welcome to Tuesday's edition of the dceu Daily. On today's show, we'll be talking about why WB rejected Ta-Nehisi Coates and J.J. Abrams' pitch for a Superman of colour. Then we'll discuss how we make Superman relevant for a Superman movie in such a jaded era of humanity. Then we'll discuss why the current incumbents of WB Pictures will never release the haircut. And finally, we will react to the breaking news that Ezra Miller was arrested for drunken and disorderly behaviour over in Hawaii. I don't know why celebrities always decide to go to Hawaii to be disorderly and break the law, but there you go. So this is the dceu Daily. Let's get started. So was it last year or the year before we heard the breaking news that J.J. Abrams would produce a Ta-Nehisi Coates written Superman of colour? We were just excited to hear about a Superman movie being made. And we thought, you know what? A Superman of colour set in the 90s would be very exciting. Maybe it's Calvin Ellis. Who's Calvin Ellis? Well, Calvin Ellis becomes President Superman. He becomes the President of America. And he becomes the leader of a multiversal Justice League. Imagine that. He's a great version of Superman. And it's great inclusion and representation. Everyone wins. There's another version called Val-Zod. An even better backstory than the OG Kal-El. So they had options here. But no. Ta-Nehisi Coates and J.J. Abrams really wanted to stir the pot and basically race-bend Kal-El Clark Kent as a black man, even though there's at least two fabulous Supermen of colour already in the comics, where the audience would have supported them, we all would have supported their representation, but no. They tell you they're about kindness and compassion. But what's compassionate about race-bending Superman? Just like Ava DuVernay, Warner Brothers never approached Ta-Nehisi Coates to write this movie. These were pitches that were ultimately rejected. Warner Brothers wanted J.J. Abrams to write and direct a Superman movie. But J.J. Abrams didn't want this. J.J. Abrams wanted Ta-Nehisi Coates, a social commentator on race issues, to write a Superman movie. But they weren't interested in making a great, epic Superman movie that finally makes Superman relatable in live action in the 21st century. As I say, they wanted to stir the pot and twist the narrative as they usually do today. This is Hollywood today. This is the entertainment industry, everyone. So why were Warner Brothers suddenly uncomfortable about this? Consider, they've race-bent so many characters now. Normally, it wouldn't matter to them. But Superman's a little different. You see, I love celebrating Superman today as a universal, international, global hero. But that's not how he started. You see, America hasn't really given the world very much, but one thing it has given the world is the superhero. And Superman was the very first kind of, all kind of true blue American hero. A lot of people from the older generation still see him as that. So once you start messing with Superman, you've got a big problem. It's a big statement that will begin an absolute riot. So this is why ultimately Warner Brothers came to their senses. You can mess with a lot of things, but you can't mess with Superman. As I say, there's already at least two awesome Supermen of colour in the annuals of DC Comics. It's already there. But they wanted to race-bend Clark Kent. Ultimately, after reading his first treatment he handed in October or December, Warner Brothers said no. which I'm sure J.J. Abrams wasn't happy about. Hey, you know, grab a tissue, mate. That's life. Don't get me wrong. I've always admired J.J. for Alias and Lost and Fringe. But unfortunately, J.J. has become something else in the past few years. Maybe that's who J.J. always was. Probably was. So in rejecting this pitch, which obviously was going to make a huge commentary on social justice, it's interesting. Why were they okay with this at the beginning? They announced it. Why didn't they write this pitch in secret? They always like to get an audience view. Unfortunately for them, the reaction wasn't great about this from the very beginning, but not from white Superman fans. You'll be very surprised to hear that my black audience, a lot of my black audience were very critical of this. A lot of black people I know were very critical about this. And I've mentioned it before, Ray Fisher was very critical about this. So why were black people triggered by this? You would have thought they'd be happy, right? They were being represented as Superman. Because these black people are actually Superman fans. They don't want Clark Kent to be black. They want Clark Kent to remain who he is. They're upset, and they were upset because Calvin Ellis wasn't going to be the Superman in this movie, because Calvin Ellis represents them. He's based on Barack Obama. He's inspired on Barack Obama, right? And that's a great person and character to be inspired by, whatever you think about his politics. So we could have had a Calvin Ellis Superman. Imagine it, President Superman. Read the bloody comics. They're amazing. It would have been awesome. The leader of a multiversal Justice League. Guess what? As they just incited a multiverse strategy, yeah? So imagine having a black Superman as the leader of a multiversal Justice League, and what judgment that would have made. That would have been great. That would have been celebrated, because we all love Calvin Ellis, right? Even though we're all supposed to be ists and isms, right? It's funny that, isn't it? But race bending the OG Superman. Imagine this. Cavill's OG Superman, Calvin Ellis' Superman, and Val Zod standing together like in a Spider-Man No Way Home movie, celebrating two black Supermen standing with a white Superman in solidarity. Imagine that. Isn't that kind? Isn't that compassionate? What does this say about people like J.J. Abrams and Ta-Nehisi Coates? What are extremists? And extremists on both sides of the political narrative all hate certain groups of people. It's about hate, not love, because Calvin Ellis is the real representation and inclusion. Val Zod is the real representation and inclusion. We heard they were doing a Val Zod series or movie at HBO Max. From what I'm hearing, that's dead too. So they didn't like the pitch. Apparently, it went deep. It was a deep dive in commentary, in social justice commentary. They didn't like it. If I was to be a gambling man, again, I would think that David Zaslav and Discovery caught wind of this, because it's been in the news this was announced nearly 2 years ago. They weren't happy about this either. So that won't be happening. See, Warner Brothers understand one thing. Even when they hacked Superman's upper lip to pieces, they understand it even more now, but they've always understood it, that he's so important. You can't mess around with the OG Clark Kent, Kal-El Superman. You can't race bend him. You can race bend anyone else that you want. Not that it's right. I mean, it's funny how the extreme left are offended by whitewashing, right? Quite right so, because that's wrong as well. But they're not offended by race bending from white to black. And that's interesting to me. The hypocrisy isn't lost on me. So this isn't going to happen now. So what happens to Superman now? Is he put on the same shelf he was after Justice League? Or do we sit down and think about this? How do we make Superman relatable, the Clark Kent Superman relatable in this day and age, in a jaded day and age where everyone is shouting at each other and everyone is so angry? Nobody knows what they're angry about, but we're all angry and unhappy because this is a spoiled Western culture. We're never satisfied, right? Everything has to be perfect the way we want it to be. That's why we're so angry. So how do we bring Superman into all of this? We have to go to Robert Downey Jr.'s casting in Iron Man. Before Robert Downey Jr.'s casting as Tony Stark, nobody really cared about Tony Stark or Iron Man. I'm sure he had his fans before people get into me. But let's be honest here. He made the character popular. What is it about Rob that was so relatable? Well, Rob is a relatable guy. You know, anyone who's seen him being interviewed or who's spoken to him knows that Robert Downey Jr. just comes across as an everyman. And he's very, very good as this character, especially in the first movie. He has the sarcasm. He's this basically, and he doesn't, in his performance, doesn't hide the fact that this is, you know, a flawed billionaire, you know, that's making weapons to go out to war that are hurting people. And within the performance, the character evolves to realize what he's doing is wrong. That first film is simply really, really good. In fact, Robert Downey Jr. is so relatable as a billionaire, a flawed billionaire. He would have been a great playboy, Bruce Wayne. They missed the trick there. Robert Downey Jr.'s casting doesn't just make Iron Man a success, they build the entire MCU on top of his casting. He cameoed in so many movies. His name's mentioned in so many movies. This is how the MCU became so big, because of one really good actor with that Genevieve, that class, that personality. And this is what the casting of Superman needs. I've said this before and I'll say it again. This Superman, who doesn't say much and hasn't got much of a personality, simply won't work for a jaded mainstream audience. Superman is relatable for me and for you and many people. He's not relatable to the mainstream audience that nearly made Spider-Man No Way Home $2 billion. Superman has to be funny sometimes. He needs a personality. Sometimes he may need to nod and wink. But you need an actor who can convey the kind of sarcasm, humour, personality, but also the pure-heartedness that Superman needs. There's only one actor who's ever done this who's played Superman, and that's Christopher Reeve. The Juilliard graduate nailed this. You got that moment in Superman the movie when Lois Lane dies and he's screaming to the heavens. It's so compelling and effective. But then he catches a cat burglar climbing up a building. He says to the burglar, "Something wrong with the elevator?" Again, it works. Back in '78, audience couldn't stop laughing at that moment. And many moments, you know, when he says to Lois, "I believe in truth and justice and the American way." Something that would never be said in a film today. Fair enough, right? We live in different times. But the way he says it, you look into that man's eyes. He believes it. So Christopher Reeve literally is the Robert Downey Jr. for Superman back in '78. He's the first actor to actually play a serious version of a comic book character and a superhero. He nailed it because he was a talented Juilliard graduate. He was the all-round Superman. That's why he's still the best. Because the other versions, including Brandon Routh and Henry Cavill, who I love, right? Those movie versions were too stiff, if you like. Because directors see Superman as stiff. He has been stiff in the past. But I think what you need to do with Superman to make him relatable, you need to actually, and people will say this wouldn't work, but you actually need to mix George Reeves with Christopher Reeves. If you go back to George Reeves, Clark Kent, he was very passionate about being a reporter. And sometimes he could be very gruff and serious with villains. and sometimes even rough with villains. This was the OG Superman from Action Comics #1. So what you can do, you cast an actor like Robert Downey Jr. I'm not saying Robert Downey Jr. himself would make a great Superman. Listen to what I'm saying to you. But he's relatable. He has the talent, like Christopher Reeve did, to have everything. The humor and those compelling moments, like when Chris's Superman is screaming to the heavens when Lois dies. This is what you need. Sometimes you need to make the audience laugh. I wouldn't change Snyder's Superman for anything. That's fine. But it's done. Right now, we need to get Superman's house in order properly. So you need to find someone with that special something. First of all, the audience must find the actor relatable. This doesn't necessarily mean that you need a name. All it means is you need someone that has those qualities that I'm talking about. So that's something I would do. Now, I've spoken about the kind of Superman film I've done in the past, but I was having my breakfast, peanut butter on toast with butter, by the way. Yes, I have butter with peanut butter. How strange. Anyway, I'm strange. So I was thinking about this. Maybe in my Superman movie, Superman on Smallville or Clark Kent on Smallville wouldn't have his powers yet. So let's just say he goes through everything, his father dies, then he gets a message somehow via a crystal that was hidden. But instead of it being a flashing green crystal like in Superman the movie, and somehow he knows he's got to go to the North Pole, I've got a better idea. This crystal beams up this kind of map that shows him a map of the North Pole and pinpoints where he needs to go with this crystal. So he sets off. He goes to the North Pole. But instead of Superman the movie just having a few sound effects like it's windy and difficult, we see this mortal Clark Kent, who hasn't gained his powers yet, going to the North Pole, huddled, laying on the ice, cold. He's dying, right? He's literally dying because he can't handle being in the North Pole. The cold, frosty wind is in his face, right? He's suffering. And then somehow he finds the strength and he puts the crystal down on the floor. And then he walks away from it. And then it becomes the fortress. And he goes into the fortress. And then his father Jor-El, or an image of his father Jor-El, or maybe even his mother Lara. Maybe we'll twist the narrative there. I don't know. I haven't made my mind up about that. But anyway, he trains. He doesn't get his powers yet. He trains and he trains for years in the fortress. He never goes back to civilization. Not at this point. And after he has his 5-year training, then he gains his power. Because Jor-El has been withholding the power all this time via another crystal being beamed at the Kent farm. Now he has his power. Actually, I've got a better idea. That's a dumb idea. I admit, that's a dumb idea. You see, I admit my mistakes. Because what happens is, you know what Jor-El does when he sends him to Earth? He puts a blue kryptonite ring on him. So he doesn't have his powers at first. So this is a much better idea. Yeah, my mistake and my bad, this is much. So he's got a blue kryptonite ring from as when he's a baby or a necklace or whatever, right? Don't know. We'll work it out if we ever get to make the movie, which will never happen. So after his training in the fortress, literally the ring smashes into pieces and then he becomes Superman. And then he gets a job at the Daily Planet. He meets Lois Lane. That is my full story. And that would be my story. He's working at the Daily Planet with Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane and the whole John Corbin and Metallo and the Elite storyline and flashbacks and lots of different things. Now, kind of maybe all the stuff that you see in the Fortress and in Smallville would be flashbacks, and maybe this is a Superman, as I've said earlier, that's been around for a very, very long time, and he even has flashbacks to World War II when they want him to kill the Nazis and Hitler, and then the Elite turn up and want him to kill Metallo. So at least with those flashbacks, we get to see him in his Action Comics #1 costume, because I've always wanted to see that in a live-action movie. So that's what I would do with Superman. But as I said earlier, I got a bit distracted there with how Superman doesn't have his powers as a young man. But we got there, right? But as I say, the most important thing is that Superman is played by someone with that quality. So he's not just some dull guy breathing in and not saying much. He can be the pure good man from Kansas, but he can still have a personality. He can still be pure and still have a personality. We actually make this Clark Kent Kal-El Superman interesting as well and relatable to an audience. We have something powerful here. And that's what I would do with Superman. And that's how I would make him relatable. Now let's move on to the haircut of Suicide Squad. When the Suicide Squad first movie was released, you know, David Ayer was asked about a director's cut, and he lied, and he said there was no director's cut. This was his movie. As he admitted later on, he was the good soldier. It turned out that Jeff Johns had rewritten his movie, and WB forced him to go and reshoot this script. And it was edited, because David refused to edit it, by a music video company. Why do you think David Ayer's Suicide Squad movie, the Ayer cut, will never be released by these people running WB today? It may be by Discovery. They're different because they've got nothing to hide. But these people made these decisions. Toby Emmerich made these decisions. People always say to me, well, it's new people there. I've said it in the past, but I'm wrong. Toby Emmerich has been there since 2017. He was part of all of this. That's why they don't want the Ayer cut to be released, because it shows a different movie, a deeper take. We already know there's no actual, radio music, singing music, songs in David Ayer's Ayer cut. It's all composed music. I prefer superhero movies like that anyway. So imagine how much better it would be. Now, I don't mind that Suicide Squad movie. I still find it entertaining. I still think it's a bodged up job, but it's not a bad bodged up job. That should never have happened, admittedly. And that's why these people will never release this movie. This is why Toby Emmerich never wanted to release the Snyder Cut. It was Stanky and AT&T who made that decision. And oh boy, were WB Pictures and Toby Emmerich pissed about that. So right now, that film isn't going to happen under this leadership. The only way we ever see the Ayer cut is if Discovery remove this leadership, which is rumoured to be the case. We will have to wait and see about that. Now, finally today, there's been breaking news just before I started this video that Ezra Miller, our very own Barry Allen in the DCEU and Flash, has been arrested and fined for very, very bad behaviour in Hawaii. So apparently he was a bit aggro, maybe I think he even assaulted a couple of people. I don't know the exact details. So it's not been a good day for Hollywood. Of course, this is not the first time Ezra Miller has been in trouble. He was accused of, I think it was last April Fool's or the April Fool's before, of assaulting a woman. I never really knew the truth about it. I always assumed it was just an April Fool's joke that went wrong. Who knows though? So he's got a bit of previous here. This is not good because he's in Fantastic Beasts and the Secrets of Dumbledore. It's weeks away, I think. Must be just weeks away. It's released next month of being released. That's not good for that movie. But what does this say about him being the Flash? The Flash is a hero. One of the rules for these superheroes is to keep their reputation pure. Now, when you're Batman, it doesn't really matter if it comes out if you're an alcoholic and stuff like that, because Batman's a dark character. You can kind of get away with it. As you can see from Henry Cavill, I've never heard anything bad about Henry or Brandon Routh or Christopher Reeve or even Dean Cain. No, you can't say Dean Cain's a bad person because he's a Republican, right? We don't judge people on this channel for who they vote for. Everyone has a right to vote for who they want, right? I'm not a Republican. If I was in America, I would be Democrat, just putting it out there. But anyway, so when you're playing a superhero and you get caught doing stuff like this, it's not great. I don't know why all these celebrities go to Hawaii to misbehave, but this is not a good thing. And it just brings more problems to Discovery when they come over, because do they just let this slide and carry on? We have a Flash movie that's been delayed for 7 months. Nobody knows its future, and now the actor has been caught misbehaving, and he's actually been arrested, bailed, released, and fined, whatever, right? Sometimes these things get buried under the carpet. Sometimes, you know, people say, don't worry about it. And sometimes a company will take a different stance. Now, this company will probably bury this under the carpet. You know, the current incumbents of Warner Brothers Pictures will not be sacking Ezra Miller. First of all, this is not the male, this is not the normal white male. He doesn't even identify as a male. So this is not what extreme left Hollywood are after. Normally, you know, if this was Henry Cavill, they'd have a field day. He's a straight white male. But with Ezra, he's not their target. So they're going to leave him alone. So it's interesting. What does Discovery do with things like this? Because they're going to put people in charge. I think there will be a DC Studios. I hope there will be. And you know, a Warner Brothers Discovery Motion Pictures. And apparently a former CEO from Paramount will be leading that. We don't know how true that is. So there's going to be changes. And I think this kind of thing will not be acceptable to Discovery. The current incumbents of Warner Brothers Pictures, I think, as I said, this is acceptable. But I think that this kind of thing isn't going to be acceptable to Discovery. So if you're asking me if Ezra Miller's position as the Flash is under risk, well, things like this can always change things. It's like the Will Smith thing. A lot of people have supported him. Some people don't support him. I'm in the middle of that. But there will be a quarter of the audience now who will boycott him, who will not support him, not go and see his stuff. That's still a lot of money. And it won't be forgotten. People will never forget that. And now everyone's reporting that Ezra Miller has literally been arrested for breaking the law in Hawaii. Because the April Fool's thing was barely reported. I think it was only the Fandom Menace that made a big deal out of it. So clearly it was something and nothing, or something maybe the industry was trying to bury at the time. And how ironic, a day before on this channel and everywhere, we were celebrating Ezra Miller's wonderful Flash cheer moment that won the cheer award at the Oscars. It's a great scene. Zack Snyder putting it together beautifully and Ezra performing it fantastically. And today, he's ruined all those celebrations and excitement in hope of restoring the Snyderverse. Because how do you restore the Snyderverse if maybe one of the actors isn't around anymore? It's a big moment. Listen, lots of things happen to celebrities. They do a lot of bad things, and normally it's buried under the carpet. Probably this will be forgotten in weeks to come. Some people won't let him forget it, and he'll still be the Flash. But when you're playing these characters, these iconic characters, unfortunately, you have a responsibility. You know, when I get up in the morning, I don't have a responsibility, right? I don't have to be pure and good, right? I can stand in the middle of the road, hopefully not getting run over, drinking a bottle of scotch and smoking and shouting obscenities. It doesn't matter what I do. Nobody fucking cares. But when you're playing the Flash, one of the most iconic characters in fiction, and young children believe in you, you can't be doing this. Christopher Reeve knew this. Henry Cavill and Brandon Routh and Tom Welling knew this and behaved accordingly. Most people playing these characters take that element seriously. Tyler Hoechlin takes it seriously. And someone's got to have a word with him. The problem is with him, and he's been shouting his mouth off even on Instagram for a long time now. Someone needs to calm him down. The problem is he's not a calm lad. And when you have this kind of essence of self-importance like these people have, it's a huge problem. The truth is here, I'm not sitting in judgment of Will Smith or Ezra Miller. You know why? Because I admit we're all flawed. And even celebrities are flawed. What I would say to celebrities is, though, if you're so flawed, why do you think you are so much better than us and you can dictate to us about how we live and how we act and how we vote? This has been Tuesday's edition of the dceu Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives, please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again later. So until we meet again, goodbye. Au revoir. Auf Wiedersehen. See you again later.